Hello again. I hope you guys are doing well. This is Mr. Bennett, and I want to talk to you this evening about choosing a legal form of business. It's Chapter 7, Section 2, page 187. I'd like to talk to you first about some of the goals or objectives for this particular section of the course. One, I want to list the advantages and disadvantages of something called a sole proprietorship. Number two, I want to list the advantages and disadvantages of a partnership, and we'll try to talk about examples of common types of partnerships. And last, we'll list the advantages and disadvantages of a corporation. And when we talk about corporations, we talk about companies that are publicly traded. In some instances, where people can buy shares of stock in companies and share in the profits, the dividends, the capital appreciation. Some of the terms we'll talk about: sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, shares of stock, the board of directors, and something called dividends. So I'm at the bottom of page 187. If you could follow along while I read aloud. Once you decide to start your own business, you must decide what type of ownership the business will have. A business that's owned exclusively by one person is called a sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorships enable one person to be in control of all aspects of a business. Sole proprietorships may be very small businesses with just a few employees, or they may be large businesses with hundreds of employees. Again, bottom of page 187, advantages of a sole proprietorship. The government exercises very little control over sole proprietorships, so such businesses can be established and run very simply. Accurate, turn to page 188. Accurate tax records and certain employment laws must be met, but these are usually the only forms of government regulations for a sole proprietorship. For this reason, the sole proprietorship is the most common form of ownership in the United States. And a lot of times I think of, when I think of sole proprietorships, I think of your corner store, like a pizza place, certain kinds of restaurants. A lot of times someone has their own garage where they fix cars or something of that nature. It's one person generally, and they can basically run the entire business. Now, they might eventually have employees that do various jobs, but they can run the store or run the restaurant, they can cook the food, they can tend the bar, they can fix cars, they can do the books, they can they pay the bills, they manage the employees, they train people. So sole proprietorships, very common, very basic form of business ownership. Some of the disadvantages of a sole proprietorship, again, I'm on top of page 188. It can be difficult to raise money for a sole proprietorship. You're the only person investing money. You also bear the burden of all the risks when you start a sole proprietorship. So if a sole proprietorship fails and debts remain, the entrepreneur's personal assets might be taken to pay what's owed. Rachel Gibson learned this lesson the hard way. Last year, her clothing store went out of business, leaving $42,000 in debt. Because Rachel had set up the business as a sole proprietorship, she had to sell some of her personal assets, including her car, to pay off the debts of the business. I'm going to continue with the next part of this chapter in a little bit on partnerships.